Welcome to Reread. Today we're going through the Return of the Jedi novelization, and it's just a rendition of the movie. But it does have some interesting stuff. In fact, the first appearance ever of jizz whalers is there. That's what they call them in the novelization, jizz whalers. Dated now, but back in the day, yeah, they meant jazz. They thought, well, we'll call it jizz. What an innocent time 1983 was. But also, Jabba tells Luke that he killed Jedi back in the day when they meant something. And I was like, oh wow, I totally forgot about this reference. We never see Jabba kill a Jedi. And I would love if someone from the original, who wrote a prequel novel had Jabba killing Jedi. I think that would have been great. Plus, Jabba's this big bad. I mean, we saw Jabba here and there, but make him the big bad guy who can kill Jedi, so that when he tells Luke that, it makes it sounds, it kind of rings true and harkens back to maybe some adventure that we'd read earlier. Now, I will also mention this: Jabba the Hutt, most of his dialogue is already translated to English. They do the same thing for the Ewoks. In fact, we get to hear Chief Chirpa's message to the Ewoks, like what he was telling them. They give you the basic, universal basic edition of it. So that was kind of neat. Boba Fett has a line in the novel. He says, when he's talking to Han Solo, "Get out of my way, you blind fool!" Boy, I'm glad George decided not to put that in there. Or maybe it was the director who went, "No, we're not putting that in there." They also have a really funny scene where when Han Solo goes, 3PO, you tell Jabba that worm-ridden pile of filth, when he's giving his message. He's actually screaming at the desert, and Chewbacca has to turn him around, and then he starts over again because he can't see. That was hilarious. Totally forgot that was in here. Of course, they have the sandstorm scene. We've seen that now on a Blu-ray, but it was already in the novelization, which I thought was fun. Obi-Wan tells Luke the story of, when he and Anakin fought. Anakin fell into a molten pit, and when he climbed out of it, burned and scarred, he was now Darth Vader. Well, there's a little poetry here, because later on, when Vader takes off the mask, when he tells Luke, "Help me take off this mask so I can see you with my own eyes," it also says the moment that the armor, the face mask was removed, he was no longer Darth Vader. He became Anakin Skywalker. Now, I never noticed that symmetry in the story until just this reread, so that was interesting. But this is where we get that Obi-Wan and Uncle Owen were brothers. He said, "I gave you to my brother Owen on Tatooine." That's what Obi-Wan says. And one thing that is a contradiction here, he said, "Your father didn't know that your mother was pregnant." Now, they should have said pregnant with twins. Pregnant with, you just add a "with twins" in there, and we would have had no problem, because obviously Anakin did not know there were two of them. But let's see, what else is on here? Oh, yeah. So when Luke reveals to Leia that he is her sister, or his sister, he goes, when they part ways and he walks off, he says, "Goodbye, dear sister, lost and found. Goodbye, sweet, sweet Leia." That's terrible. And probably George wrote that dialogue and the director went, "Nope, move it on. We'll fix that in post." Maybe had Luke say it and say, "Okay, we'll fix that in post," like delete it forever. But that was in the book, which I thought was funny. Also, Vader, it seems, impressed by little things. Luke built his own lightsaber. That's good. Whoa, he's stronger than the Emperor thought and everything. And you're thinking, man, it sounds kind of ridiculous, right? Because Luke's doing stuff that we've seen other Jedi do, and we've seen better Jedi do it. But reading this in chronological order, if you've read Shadows of the Empire, Vader is just oozing with pride over his boy Luke. So he's proud of everything. "Look who made their own lightsaber. That's my son. He didn't have any help." Now, Vader, for some reason, thinks that Obi-Wan taught you well. He keeps saying about Obi-Wan. Well, this was a scene in the book that was great. It was great. The Emperor goes, "Obi-Wan did indeed teach you well, but who's been continuing to train you?" He knows, you couldn't have gotten this strong over a short time. Obi-Wan died a long time ago, and you've become even stronger. Who has trained you? And then, even though Luke doesn't say the name, he thinks it, and the Emperor picks it up and goes, "Yoda. So you've met the Grand Jedi Master." He goes, "Is he still with us?" And then Luke's not saying anything, and Luke's kind of afraid, because Luke thinks again. He goes, the Emperor says, Ah, so he is gone now too. Good, the Jedi are now completely killed off, or whatever. And Luke is terrified because now he understands that the Emperor can read his thoughts. So that's part of it, part of what's going on inside of Luke. The controversy and stuff, the tension and whatnot gets amped up in those scenes in the novelization, and it's really good. And I'm glad that he mentions Yoda too. Also, when Darth Vader and Luke are fighting, Luke kind of hides underneath that crawl space with a bunch of shadows. But what you don't know in the novelization is Darth Vader hears Luke talking, and he doesn't know, it's kind of like the voice is bouncing all over the place, and then he sees Luke's lightsaber roll up to him. Luke gave him his lightsaber. He's like, "I will not fight you, Father." He went, "Yes, you will." And that's when he finds out your sister, your twin sister, Obi-Wan's failure is now complete. If you won't join me, then perhaps she will. And when he's saying all that, Luke is getting angry because, no, do not touch Leia. I'm fine. If I die, just try, taking you out and the Emperor out with me, that's fine. He gets mad because he's very protective over his newfound sister, and he says he uses the Force to grab the lightsaber because Darth Vader had clipped it onto his belt. He uses the Force to grab his own lightsaber and then attacks Darth Vader. Kind of a cool scene. Kind of wish they would have done that in the movie, but that was in the novelization. Other stuff that was in here was that there's a big scene with Lando and Wedge, who, when they're going after Star Destroyers, they actually take one down, and he's kind of teaming up with Red Squadron to kind of take one down. There's a whole scene like this, and as I kept reading it, I said, this is not part of the movie. This is extra stuff, because there's a lot of dialogue between Wedge and Lando. They're working together, taking out Star Destroyers, and then when the shield comes down, they do a U-turn and head straight toward the Death Star together, which is what we see, but we don't get to see all the dialogue. So I'm wondering, was that going to be a scene and they just deleted it because it was getting kind of big at the end, and they, kind of going all over the place, and they only picked the stories that they wanted to tell? Also, when the Emperor dies, there's chaos on the Death Star, because remember, it's his evil presence that's kind of it's like a Force mind link. He's been kind of controlling the Empire as one Force. Now with him gone, everyone's suddenly in chaos, everyone's panicking, people are getting away from their assigned stations. Jeff Jarrett, I think is his name, Jeff Jarrett or whatever, the guy the Moff in charge of, or whatever his title is, I don't think it's Moff, but he's in charge of the Death Star. The Emperor told him, if the shield ever comes down, and he did this in front of Luke, then point the Death Star at the moon of Endor and blow it to smithereens. And so when Jared sees that, the Emperor's dead and the shield's down, he commands them to start moving into position to destroy the moon. And it says, we don't get to see this, but as Lando and Wedge are going in there and blowing up the Death Star is closing in, it's like it's tilting down, the laser's tilting down to destroy the planet. And Jeff Jarrett, or Jeff Jarrett, or however you say his name, I don't care, is about to press the button, and of course that's when it kind of harkens back to A New Hope when they're about to fire again on Yavin 4. Okay, well, they messed up again. So I guess that maybe that's why they didn't put it in the movie, but it did make sense, because the Emperor's like, he said, they won't take down the shield, but if they do, I'm gonna kill the whole planet, just to make sure I kill your friends, Luke. And it's very vindictive, something I think the Emperor would do. So that was really good too. Everything about this was a really fun read. In fact, the original trilogy books were actually more fun than I remembered. So New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Don't just skip these if you've seen the movie a million times. I would at least read them once, because I think you can gather some new stuff from it. And they are good reads. All right, folks, that's it for now. See you next time.